Howdy, howdy. I hope you're ready for a cinematic masterpiece, Mrs. Cow. 'Cause this ain't it. Imagine you're in the kitchen cooking. I dunno, a grilled cheese sandwich. Smells good, right? The golden bread toasting on the stove. The melted cheese. Great, now I'm hungry. Anyways, let's say, hypothetically, your good old spatula, the thing you were going to use to flip this sandwich over, is dirty. So you think, hey, I'll just flip it with my God-gifted hand. What could possibly happen? You reach out to grab the grilled cheese and, well, this happens. Congratulations, you've just burnt yourself. You yank your hand away, as you should, and go put the burn under some cold water. While you're tending to your wounds, you stop and reflect on your mistake. But one thought comes across stronger than the rest. How does your brain know that you're in pain and need to pull your hand away? Well, brace yourself, because you're in for a wild ride. The sensory receptors pick up on this sudden change in heat and send a message from the presynaptic neuron, which travels down its axon. Now, neurons communicate with each other at something called synapses, which is a site where a neuron transmits a nerve impulse to another neuron. This signal is received in the dendrites of the postsynaptic neuron and sent down the axon once again. This can cause an action potential inside of the cell body. An action potential is a quick change in the neuron's membrane. Potential and switches its charges from negative to positive. We'll come back to this in a minute. At the bottom of the axon is the synaptic knob, also known as the axon terminals. This area is full of synaptic vesicles, which contain neurotransmitters. Anyways, the impulse causes an influx of Ca2+ ions, which signals the synaptic vesicles to release said neurotransmitters. And as long as there's an action potential, the signal can travel down the axon. But you may be thinking to yourself, hey, Delaney, what about if there isn't an action potential? Well, I'm so glad you asked. If there isn't a signal to trigger an action potential, then the neuron goes into what we call resting potential. That's when the inside of the axon is more negative than the outside, which is the complete opposite of when it's in action potential. In addition, the voltage stays at -70 millivolts, where it is polarized, until that signal comes along and triggers the reaction. Now, getting back to the action potential. Like I said before, if there's an action potential, the axon needs to be more positive, inside than outside, so it can carry the signal to where it needs to go. But how on earth do they make that change? Well, the reason why it's more positive outside during resting potential is because of the ions floating around outside of the axon. There are Na+ ions that kind of just chill there until they're needed. Inside, however, are the K+ ions. Once an action potential is triggered, there are Na+ channels that open and bring in some of those ions, which start to change the charge. Now, as long as the signal is strong enough to cross something called a threshold, which is at -55 millivolts, then the action potential can continue on. But what if it's not? What if it's like -56 millivolts instead? Well, then the signal just stops and goes back to resting potential. Once it crosses the threshold, more Na+ channels open up and send in even more ions. The voltage shoots up to +30 millivolts, and the neuron becomes depolarized. Once it hits 14 millivolts, the K+ channels open to bring back down the charge to just below -70 millivolts. This part of the process is called repolarization. But since the voltage is too far down, that's called hyperpolarization. But don't worry, this is completely normal. And the reason why this happens is because the K+ channels are a bit slow to close. It's kind of like being stuck behind a slow walker. Annoying, right? Anyways, once the K+ channels close after 3 to 5 business days, the Na+, K+ pumps take over to bring everything back to polarization at -70 millivolts. In a 3:2 ratio, 3 sodiums for every 2 potassiums. And there you have it. After all of that, your hand was pulled away from the hot stove. Although this sounds like a lot, it all goes down in less than a single second. Cool, right? I guess the human body really is an incredible thing.